few weeks ago, I settled down in front of my television set and tuned it in to an age-old ritual in this country, the State of the Union address by the President of the United States. I listened with a great deal of interest as Mr. Clinton outlined his economic plan for the country. You can relax, this is not going to be a Clinton-bashing speech or a President-bashing speech. I am not one of those who believe that God is a Republican. P.J. O'Rourke irreverently noted he thought that God was a Republican and Santa Claus was a Democrat. But I don't take sides in issues like that. But as I listened to the President speak, something occurred to me that I had never thought of before. Now, as a political speech, it was brilliant. One of the best I had ever heard. And people thought Ronald Reagan was the great communicator. I think they have suddenly discovered that the man in the White House may even be better than Ronald Reagan when it comes to communication, or better yet, to sales, because he can sell programs. It was a brilliant speech. It was enthusiastic. It was confident. And the one thing I was very clear about when I got to listening to it is that the President is very excited about the challenge that he faces and the task that lies ahead of him, and that he is going to tackle it the best way that he knows how. I find myself kind of caught up in it all. You know, I want to debate the issue. I mean, all of us going to lunch in power, ever since the speech, it has been economic policy at lunch. We, of course, talk about church problems, but you just can't resist saying, well, I think that's a stupid idea, or I think that's a brilliant idea, or, well, I have a better idea about the way to do it. Of course, anybody who's ever paid any attention has found out a better way of doing it than anyone else has to do. So I find myself wanting to debate economics and foreign policy and health care, and somehow or other to get involved in it all. And I believe that President Clinton really believes that he and his gaggle of brilliant young lawyers are exactly what the country needs at this particular moment in time. I saw one of these bright young lawyers interviewed out in front of the White House, with the portrait of the White House in the background, and there's one phrase in his interview that stands out in my mind. He said, "The old guard is on the run." The phrase that came to my mind after hearing that was, this will kind of date me a little bit, that young man is a little big for his britches. And I really feel that one of the hallmarks of the current administration in this way is that they are cocky and perhaps even a little bit conceited about what they think they can do, and I think they may have a very painful lesson to learn. Now, I listened very carefully to the President's speech. I was not listening for it, but I finally became aware of it as I listened as the speech went on, that there was no acknowledgement of God anywhere in the speech from beginning to end. None. Now, as I say, I didn't expect to hear an acknowledgement of God, but in years gone by, I've heard presidents say, as God is our helper, and this is a nation under God, and that God has given us this great land and all the blessings of this great land. I have heard that kind of acknowledgement before from political leaders of our country. But as I thought about it, I began to realize that if I had heard it in that speech, it would have seemed contrived. It would have been out of place. It would have sounded insincere. The speech as it was complete, coherent, and fully understandable. Now, you should understand about this that our President and the Vice President are both Southern Baptists. In case you don't know, Southern Baptists believe in keeping the church out of government and the government out of the church, both of which are very logical and laudable goals. But I don't believe it's fundamental to their beliefs, nor was it to our founding fathers, to keep God out of government, and that is not the same thing. So as I listened to his speech, with no mention of God all the way through it, I asked myself, what is wrong with this picture? Now, a clue to this is going to come to you when I read this passage back in Deuteronomy to you. You'll turn back to Deuteronomy, the 8th chapter. Now, this whole passage, and it begins really even earlier than chapter 8, where God is talking to Israel about what they are supposed to do when he brings them into the land. I'm going to bring you out of the wilderness into a land. I'm going to drive the nations out before you. And as you go into the land, here is the way I want you to be. This is the way to live your life, to run your affairs, to carry on your government, to carry on your living, in order that life will work, so that your country, your nation will work, so that you'll be blessed in the land, so you can be happy in the land, so you can have your grandchildren around you and your great-grandchildren, and you can have your son inherit your land and his son inherit the land, and so that we can all enjoy the fruit of our land for all these years. There is a way to go about doing these things. And starting all the way back to chapter 7 and going all the way through chapter 10 is a marvelous sermon. I've made sermons out of this before, going verse by verse through this passage, because it is so powerful. But today I'm only going to read to you here in the 8th chapter, beginning in verse 10. When you have eaten and are full, then you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land which he has given you. The funny thing about it, our custom is that we bless God or thank God before we eat. But this one says, when you have eaten and are full, then you shall bless the Lord your God for all the good land which he has given you. I don't think it's talking about the blessing of your meal. I think it's talking in a general way. You're in your land, you've got plenty to eat, and you're sitting around someday after you've had a good meal and a couple of glasses of wine, and you're watching the children play outside, and you should take a deep breath and sigh within yourself and thank God for what you have and what he's given you. Beware that you forget not the Lord your God in keeping his commandments and his statutes and his judgments, which I command you this day. Lest, when you have eaten and are full, and have built good houses and dwelt in them, when your herds and your flocks multiply, and your silver and your gold and everything you have is multiplied. Now, folks, you'll look a long way to find a better description of our economy than that. We have eaten and are full. There are exceptions, and there are pockets of poverty in our country. But we have eaten. We are full. We have built goodly houses and we dwell in them. And even when you go into poor neighborhoods in our country, compared to the world at large, there's good houses. They're warm, they're dry, you've got shelter, you don't have the wind blowing through your hair while you're trying to sit there and have lunch. We have homes. Notwithstanding a few people who still have the problem, people whom we ought to be helping. But he says this, when all this has happened, he said, beware lest your heart be lifted up, verse 14, and you forget the Lord your God that brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage, who led you through that great and terrible wilderness wherein there were fiery serpents and scorpions and drought, and there was no water, and he brought you forth water out of the rock of flint, who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers didn't know. He did all this that he might humble you, that he might prove you, so he could do you good at your latter end. Now, there's a metaphor here for a person's life. We go through times of trial. We encounter the serpents, and we have to do without, and we have to make sacrifices, and we find ourselves sometimes alone or loose ends. And God allows those things to happen to us, and does not relieve them of us of them in many cases. So he can test us and prove us, so that he can do us good in our latter end. Now, having all this happen to you, I want you to beware, lest, having done that, you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand has gotten me this wealth. But you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he that gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant which he swore to your fathers as it is this day. Now when I look around our country today, and I read my newspapers, and I follow all that I see on television, and I try to watch it carefully, it is kind of astonishing to me to hear that we are in an economic crisis. Now, true, we have economic problems. We have problems were meant to be solved. True, we have difficulties in our healthcare system. But frankly, as far as healthcare is concerned, what people can do for you, as far as the capabilities that are there, it's incredible what we have in this country. Our problem is not a healthcare mess. The problem is that costs are getting higher, and that there are people who are too poor in many cases to have full-bore health care, and that there are people who have no health insurance at all. That's where the problem is. It's not that we have a bad health care system in this country, it's that we have not resolved the problems of how to administer to a broader group of our citizens. But by and large, the health care system in this country is incredible. I've lived overseas, folks. We have an incredible health care system in this country. Our economy in this country is powerful and strong. We are the only superpower left in the world. We have the strongest economy in the world. Now, the problem we have is not our economy. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as I go along. But listen to what he says. You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he that gives you the power to get wealth. And if you have wealth, he has given you the power to get it. Of course, presumably, he could also take away that power, should he choose to do so. He did it so he could establish his covenant, and he swore to your fathers as it is this day. And it shall be, if you do at all forget the Lord your God, and walk after other gods and serve them and worship them, I testify against you this day, you shall surely perish. Just like the nations that the Lord destroyed before your face, so shall you perish, because you would not be obedient to the voice of the Lord your God. If you do at all forget the Lord your God. Now I suppose that a lot of people feel safe in this regard, in that although perhaps as a people we haven't forgotten God, at least we're not chasing around after Baal and Moloch and the Ishtar and the different fish gods. And they feel that they are now pursuing other gods. The problem is, I read a phrase not long ago in an editorial written by George Will that I had not come across before. It was an older editorial in one of his books, a collection of his essays. The rest of the essay, I don't even remember what it was, because this phrase leaped off the page at me because it was new to me. And I didn't fully understand where it was coming from. The phrase was civil religion. And he was talking about our civil religion in this country. And I thought, I wonder what he means by that. How am I to take that? Well, a little later, my wife discovered this phrase in the book, a book that's been out for some little time now on cultural illiteracy, I think it's called. It has to do with the difficulty we have in communication in this country because of the disparate multiculturalism, that we don't have the same vocabulary or the same shared experiences so that we can communicate well with one another. It creates big problems. In that he spoke about the idea of a civil religion, explaining that in our country we have had and have now and have had from the very beginning a civil religion. Now, in the book Cultural Illiteracy, he explained this to mean that it is like a religion in that you even have the sacred literature, as it were. The Holy Writ, as it were, of our civil religion includes the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men were created equal, and that they were all endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Our Constitution is another part of our Holy Writ, of our civil religion. Now, what is brought out in this article, in the book, and I may myself not remember what I read in the book and what I concluded from what I've read, but when our fathers founded this country, they very much believed in God. They spoke of God, they prayed, they read the Bible, and so consequently, when they, in the process of forming the Constitution, they wrote in there that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion. Now, by this they did not mean that we should not have any belief in God, or that God would not be the underpinning of our civil religion. What they were trying to do was establish a non-sectarian concept of God. They wanted to speak of God in the most general terms possible, but they wanted to speak of God, and it was very important that they do so. The book pointed out, and I think it's very relevant, that there needs to be some ground for the moral authority behind any of the laws or the structure of a nation. What is the moral authority that underlies our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution? Well, the moral authority behind the Declaration of Independence, at least the very founding document of this country, is that we believe that all men were created. For if we don't believe they were created, how can we argue that they were created equal? Think about it. And that they were endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights. So that the very foundation of our liberty, the very foundation upon which it was all built, that which even made it possible, it is a terrible anachronism of our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution coexisting with slavery in this country. It's hard to get your mind around. But the truth is that those documents made it possible to end slavery in this country. And they made it possible because they said from the beginning that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights. So the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, everything that we have laid out at the beginning of the laws of this country, the law that says we shall not kill our neighbor, for example, the law that says you don't get up in court and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and then lie through your teeth. All these things are founded on an idea of a creator and a God, or a God who is creator. Now, so the idea, the foundation, the fundamental thing of our civil religion, if you will, all was founded on the idea of God. But there was a problem. The founding fathers knew that religion and religions are notoriously intolerant of other religions. That's a given. Therefore, they wanted the broadest possible statement of God. They did not want to have any kind of sectarian idea of God. So they said, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, and Congress shall not do anything to abridge the free exercise of religion in this country, or the freedom of speech relative to religion in this country. And we have a terrible conflict going on, which I'm going to talk about. And the reasons for that conflict that exists in this country, which I had not gotten clear in my mind until after I heard the President speak and had a moment of time to reflect on what I had heard. Now think about this for a moment. It is in the nature of government to assume the prerogatives of God. It is in the nature of government to assume the prerogatives of God. Historically, this is true. The Egyptian pharaohs were considered gods by their people. The Roman emperors, many of them were considered gods. Not all, because Rome went through a period of time when she was a republic and was not really led by an emperor. But the Roman emperors were considered gods. The Japanese emperor was considered a god. And of course the Japanese constitution was amended by MacArthur to break them away from that concept and try to get to a more democratic, structured government. Why is it this way? Why does this type of thing happen this way? Well, it's not that hard to figure in a sense, because there has to be some underlying moral authority. There has to be some underlying power that has that ultimate authority to rule the people. Now, in Egypt of old, that authority was the Pharaoh. His word was law. If he said you died, you died. There was no appeal. The same thing was true in Rome. The same thing was true in Japan. The emperor had absolute and unbridled authority. You live or die at his word. And he answers to no one, perhaps except God. You may have heard the expression, the divine right of kings. The assumption down through all of the Middle Ages and through much of the human history is that kings rule by divine right. Either by the right of the gods, plural, perhaps if you were a Greek, it was the Greek pantheon. If you were Roman, it was the Roman pantheon. And they often elevated their king or their ruler, their emperor, as to the status or into the status of one of those gods, because he had absolute authority over the people who formed a part of his government. Okay? So it is that kings assume that kind of authority. I want you to turn back with me to Daniel, the 4th chapter, to a rather interesting little statement that's made here. This is a time when God actually intervened with and had interaction with certain pagan kings. You may not be aware of it, but part of the book of Daniel is written in Chaldean and was not even written by an Israelite at all. It was written by Nebuchadnezzar himself. Chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar the king, unto all people, nations, and languages that dwell on all the earth, peace be multiplied with thee. Now, I'm not going to read this whole passage of Scripture to you. I just want to tell you the story, and I want to show you where you are and what you're reading in the Bible. But what has happened here is that Nebuchadnezzar took Israel captive. And God, in order to establish himself with Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar realized that he had not taken Israel captive by his own strength, but because God had willed it. First of all, gave him this vision that no one could interpret the Daniel, the vision of the great image, you know, its head of gold and its breast of silver and so on down the body of the imperial metals. And so Daniel revealed this to him, and Nebuchadnezzar praised God for what had been done. on this particular occasion. Now, in the process of time, though, he still is a very powerful figure and thinks very highly of himself. And because of the politics going back and forth in his kingdom, I'd love to read it all to you and expound it, the time won't permit, but I think most of you know these stories. You can go back and read them for yourself. Because of the politics, the people came to the king and said, look, they wanted to get Daniel, so they said to the king, we need to pass a decree that for the next so many days, no man may ask any petition of anybody in heaven or on earth but you. Now you understand that what this involves is an establishment of the divine right of kings. The acknowledgement is that there is no greater God than Nebuchadnezzar. The idea was that Daniel, whose custom it was to pray 3 times a day, and apparently prayed a lot, but his windows open. They wanted to put a stop to that. Basically, they wanted to destroy his power, what they really wanted to do. But because Nebuchadnezzar was considered a god by his people, they got the rule passed, you can't ask a petition of any man or God except Nebuchadnezzar for the next so many days. Daniel, of course, went in and prayed just like he always did. He was arrested. He was thrown in the lion's den. We had this whole rigmarole, lion's dens and fiery furnaces, all of this stuff trying to establish, first of all, that Nebuchadnezzar was king or God. But learning in the process that he wasn't God, that God was God. And then comes this chapter 4 here with the final real lesson that he had to learn. And the lesson of this was there was a dream given to him which is symbolism. Only Daniel could interpret it in. And in symbolism, the dream said, you, Nebuchadnezzar, are going to be insane. You're going to be driven out of your kingdom. You're going to lose your kingdom. And you're even going to lose your mind for 7 years. It happened. Just like the dream, just like the interpretation. His mind passes. He was walking on the palace, looking around saying, boy, look at what I built. And this man had built some stuff, folks. Look at what I built. Look at the greatness. Look at all that I have done. His mind was taken from him. He was driven out of the city. His hair grew long. His fingernails grew long. He was a wild man wandering around the trees. He slept out on the grass at night and had to dew on him. 7 years. And finally, when all was said and done, his mind was allowed to come back to him. And he said, now I, Nebuchadnezzar, extol the God of heaven. And I know that there is but one God, and that I am not him. So God had to break into, as it were, this idea of the divine right of king. It is in the nature of government. I'm using that term in a broad sense, just simply to deal with all of the power structures that grow up in this world to rule over men. It is in their nature to assume the prerogatives of God and to put on the mantle of religion. Now, late in the president's speech, as I was listening to it, the dominant impression I had was of the staggering scope of his program, of the speech, and of the problems that he was going to address and the problems that he was going to solve. He didn't give much attention, or any attention really, to foreign policy in his speech, but his focus on domestic and economic policy was total. The message that I heard from the man that night was, we are here to solve your problems. We're going to solve these problems. We've got to do it. We have to get to work. We have to deal with the deficit. We have to deal with the health care. And comes this big, long list of litany of things that we are going to solve. I'm going to read you a scripture. I'm not going to tell you where it is at the moment, but I'm going to turn back to it, and I'm going to read it to you. Let's see, I'm going to paraphrase it and see how you think it reads on this occasion. Here is a scripture that says, bless the government, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless the government, O my soul, and forget not all its benefits. Who forgives all your iniquities, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from destruction, who crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercy, who satisfies your mouth with good things, so your youth is renewed like the eagles. The government executes righteousness and judgment for all who are oppressed. Now the truth is that governments tend to think that way. And I can almost hear this coming out of Congress. I can almost hear it coming out of the White House. Think about it. Now what the Bible says, you all know, I think at this time, it is the 103rd Psalm. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. Bless Jehovah, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits. He your iniquities. He heals all your diseases. He redeems your life from destruction. He crowns you with loving kindness and with tender mercy. He satisfies your mouth with good things, so your youth is renewed like the eagle. Jehovah executes righteousness and judgment for all who are oppressed. How about listen to the President's speech from beginning to end? I don't mean to speak evil of him, because what he is doing is no different from what other presidents have done before. And because of the presumption that exists across our government. We need to understand, our government is not one man. We know that, don't we? Isn't this a government of the people, by the people, and for the people? Sometimes we think it isn't. But the truth is, it is. Now, what we get up there in Washington is essentially what we as the people deserve. Now, there are exceptions here and there. You think that's not what you want, but I'm speaking to you now not as Christians, I'm speaking to you as citizens. The way we vote, the way we go about our political process as a people in this country, we wind up getting exactly what we deserve up there. But the truth is that we are busy developing government programs up there to try to redeem people's life from destruction. The government is going to be a kinder and gentler government, we talked about. It's going to crown us with loving kindness and with tender mercy. The government's going to satisfy our mouth with good things. We're going to try to eradicate poverty and eradicate hunger in the country. The government is going to execute righteousness and judgment. Now, we people have been oppressed in this country. There's been a lot of people downtrodden in this country. We're going to put an end to that. We're going to stop all that nonsense. We're going to free the minorities, whatever particular persuasion they might be. We're going to grant and empower people all the way up and down the line. We're going to put people first. The government is going to get right out there and solve all of our problems. Now, I read you this thing, you've been putting the government in the place of the Lord in that psalm, but then you see the government is the Lord in the civil religion of this country. Even in fact, and this is the funny thing, the language of it is the language of religion. Didn't the President call for sacrifice? You know where that word comes from? That word comes from going out into your flock and looking around and picking out one of your animals, taking a little cord, making a little leash out of it, and taking that animal down to the temple, and having inspected it, presenting the animal to the priest. The priest cuts his throat, collects the blood in the bowl, and goes and sprinkles it in all the appropriate places. That is what a sacrifice is. It's a religious term. Okay? Our government is calling upon all of us to do our sacrifice. Now, when I thought about all this, and this is where the thing came to me that I had not thought of before, it is no wonder the government wants God out of the schools. Because you see, the first commandment of the Lord, as well as the first commandment of government is, thou shalt have no other gods before me. God, to a government, is the competition. And in a sense, the closer that government is to the idea that God is, to the ideas of our founding father, the more competition it is. You think, well, why is it that a teacher was not allowed to keep a Bible on his desk, but he could keep the writings of Buddha on his desk? Buddha is not the competition, folks. The Creator is the competition. That's where the difference lies. Now, the president doesn't feel this way. Your congressman doesn't feel this way. Your senator doesn't feel this way. But your government does. Your government is the whole. How many millions of people work up there? How many millions of people are involved in government in this country? You have the executive, you have the legislature, you have all of the judicial system of this country, and the way that all this stuff works up here. It's God for government is the competition. Now, I said earlier that the establishment of religion clause is in the Constitution because religion is notoriously intolerant. And they put that in there because they realized that many of our people were going to be that way. They said, we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. They did not want to go any further in defining God as the foundation of our country than our Creator because of the intolerance of religion. Now, you should understand something. The abandonment of God does not necessarily require the abandonment of religion. And in a very real sense in this country, we have done precisely that. Now bear in mind, the government is not anybody. The government is everybody. Because this is a government of the people and by the people and for the people. Organizations can begin to function like organisms. They take on the mind of their own. They develop a collective consciousness. I became painfully aware of this in relation to the Worldwide Church of God when I was appointed the Director of Church Administration in that church. Now, the Church of God International by that time, the Worldwide Church of God, was a big organization. Probably 300 ministers or pastors of churches in the field or more, that is, plus local elders and deacons all over the place, and church members in all over the world, in Europe, and South America, and South Africa, and so forth. Big organization. I went in there with certain clear knowledge and agreement with the key players in all this about certain things that really needed to be done for the benefit of the church and for the benefit of the ministry in the church. Now, let me adopt another analogy for you for a moment. Let's suppose that your heart is so weak and it's about to give out on you, and your doctor has given you a little beeper to wear on your belt. And from the time that beeper goes off, you have got 4 hours to get to the hospital to get a heart transplant before that heart that they've done for you dies. That's what the beeper's all about. You got your heart, get yourself over. You have 4 hours. So the beeper goes off. You jump in your car and you drive to the hospital. You say, "Here I am." Take you in there and they slap you on the table. They open up your chest, the rib spreaders and so forth. And they reach inside and they nix. Out comes your heart, goes in the trash can. In comes a new heart. It's closed all up. What's the first thing your body does about that new heart? What does it see when it sees it? It sees an enemy. It sees an invader. And it attacks it. And the only reason we have ever been able to be successful with heart transplants, liver transplants, kidney, lung transplants, is because of a drug called cyclosporin, which suppresses the body's immune system, that attacks all those enemies that are coming into the body. So the heart is there to save your life, and your body thinks it's there to kill you, so it tries to kill the heart. Okay? Everything I tried to do in that office to help, to build, and to develop a ministry and save the church was considered a threat. And like a heart transplanted in, attacks, like antibodies would come and attach themselves to you like an attack, and it began to happen to me. The same thing happens in this country. There is a collective consciousness, the body has antibodies, and you could transplant into this country the very best system, the very best ideas, the things that are most likely to correct our economy. The things that are most likely to put right the things that are wrong with this nation are the things most likely to be considered a threat, and most likely to be attacked, and most likely to be destroyed. And that simply is the way it is. God is foreign, and therefore must be rejected. Our government actually thinks it can do better than Jesus. But it does. Didn't Jesus say, "The poor you always have with you"? Yeah, he said that. That's interesting when you think about it. Why did he say that? Well, because Jesus understood that the dynamics of poverty are not going to change in this world. People are poor because of oppression, or foolishness, or accidental things that happen to them that destroy them. For example, you lose both of your legs in a car accident. Your economic viability in our world has been radically diminished. So you're probably going to be poor unless you get help from somewhere. You're going to be poorer than somebody who didn't have an accident. You may be poor by accident of birth. You may be poor because of disease. You may be poor because you're a lazy lout who doesn't want to work. And Jesus understood that the dynamics of poverty would always be there. And so he said, "The poor you always have with you." And one of the reasons the poor are always here is so that those of us who are not poor will have the responsibility and the obligation to reach out and to help people who are poor. But anyway, the government thinks it knows better than that, and it decides to declare war on poverty, claims it can eradicate poverty, figures it can really get out there and deal with it. And yet I want to tell you something, and it is the truth. The government feeds on poverty, the government depends on poverty, and the government uses poverty. Can you figure somebody that that needs something and uses it and depends on it, can you trust them to get rid of it? You know, that's what you're up against in our government. It was Herbert Armstrong who said that the gospel of the kingdom of God is a message of government. He's right. It really is. It is a message about government. And he went on to say that the problems of the world are the problems of government. The world is not governed right, and that is very true. Nations that are governed by kings are not governed right. Nations that are governed by demagogues and by tyrants are not governed right. And nations that are governed by their own people aren't governed right either. One thing, though, has become clear to me. God did not intend for man, did not design man, I should say, right what he intended. He did not design man to live under big government, because it is in the nature of man to divide and to break down large entities. The best illustration of this is found in the Old Testament. Now, you might have expected that when God brought Israel out of Egypt under Moses, and they went across the land under Joshua, that Joshua would have been appointed a king, and that his successors or his children would have been kings after him, and that a kingly dynasty was going to set up. What is odd about Israel is that when they went into the land, Joshua did not become a king. They had no king. In fact, Israel had no central government at all. Oh, the temple was central. And the people had to go centrally to worship. And the worship was all focused and centralized. That is, the service of God was centralized in the temple. And the judicial system of the country depended upon the temple, the moral authority of God, and the center of the worship of God's people, because the judges and the priests and all that were a part of the temple worship system. That was the only part of the civil government that was central. And it wasn't civil, it was religious. Now, as long as the people during the period of Judges obeyed God, remembered God, praised God, God remembered them and protected them from their enemies. But you remember that scripture I read in the beginning? Beware that you don't forget God. They did. They forgot. They forgot God. God forgot them. Here come the hedges come down around them. The enemy comes rolling in on them. Then they cry out to God. They said, "Oh God, forgive us. We're sorry. We forgot you. We remember you. Save us, God." So God heard them, and he sent a judge, a military commander, as it were, to come in and lead these people to fight their enemies, throw their enemies off, and to clean things up for them and give them peace in the land. And when they had peace, they forgot God. And they forgot God. God forgot them. Here comes the enemy yet again. It happened again and again and again. And the people got tired of all that. Now, this period is characterized in Judges as, in those days, there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. Now, that is sometimes construed by people as a pejorative statement. That's bad. There was no king, they did what was right in their own eyes, and that was bad. No. That was good. What could be better for you than to have the complete freedom to do what seems right to you? As long as you obey God, and remember his law, and remember him, and your neighbor does the same thing, what do you need some huge central government for? You don't, as a matter of fact. You can solve your problems another way. But because of the cycle that continued through the time of Judges, the people assumed that their troubles were because they had a lack of government. We don't have enough government, that's our problem. Make us a king to rule over us like the nations around us. God's reply to Samuel, after Samuel cried all night long about it, he said, look, go ahead and listen to these people and all the things that they tell you, because they haven't rejected you. You're not the point. They have rejected me, and I will not reign over them. The truth was, God would be their king. God would be the ground and the authority of their government. God would be the center of their government, and everything would radiate out from him. And it would not depend upon a king or a warrior, because in those days the kings were the warriors who fought your battles and led your men. Well, God said, go ahead and give it to them, but I do want you to tell them what's going to happen. Now, all this stuff leads up to, culminates in the 8th chapter of Samuel, and then follows on through as God and Samuel explain to people what is going to happen as a result of what they're going to do. The message in Samuel is that more government can only be maintained at a cost of freedom. You're going to lose this freedom, you're going to lose that freedom, you're going to lose the other freedom because of the fact that you're insisting upon having a strong central government to protect you and take care of you instead of depending on me. And I thought to myself, having heard the president's campaign staff say all through the campaign, the economy, stupid. Well, that's what they meant they wanted to focus on in order to win the election. But if you think it is the economy that is our problems in this country, you're the one that's stupid. It's not the economy. And if you look for biblical prophecy, you'll never find that it was the economy that brought people down. It was the fact that they forgot God. And then they began to rot away from the interior of their being in the society and the culture because they had forgotten God. It is not the economy. It is not foreign policy. It is not health care. It's not Social Security. It's not jobs. It's not any of the things that our federal government thinks that it is. The problem is, the point that I raised concerning the President's speech. This nation and all the government of our people, we have forgotten God. God is not in the picture. God is not in our thoughts. God is not dominant in any way in what we do. Now, if you want to know what that leads to, turn back to Romans, the very first chapter. Paul talks about a society that has gone in this precise direction. In Romans chapter 1, I can find my way back there without too much delay. Romans chapter 1, and I'm going to begin reading in verse 12, although the whole chapter has to do with this. Oops, I think I had mislaid where I want to start. I'm going to start with verse 28. Even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge. That's what I'm talking about, right? We don't want to retain God in our knowledge. We don't want to acknowledge God. We don't want God in the picture. This is not God's business here. This is ours. They did not like to retain God in their knowledge. God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. This now which follows is the result of the abandonment of God, that is, of the forgetting to retain God, of losing the moral ground and the authority of your church, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure or fun or excitement in those that do them. Want to go to movies tonight? Want to go around and find one of these movies around town? Go see if you find any of this stuff here. Did you find people taking pleasure in it? You know, God does not have to come down to us to see what's going on like He did in Sodom and Gomorrah. All you have to do is turn on television set. Pick up CNN. Watch Oprah Winfrey. That'll really load him up or down you on some of the stuff that's going on here in the world. It's not the economy. It's the fact that we have forgotten God and we have begun to rot away from the inside. And understand this, folks. Government can't do anything about it. Just can't. Now, there's a fascinating passage on this back in Ecclesiastes that I'm often fascinated by this when I read it. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, and this is where I meant to start in verse 12. Now, mind you, we're not dealing here with a young whippersnapper who just came on the scene. We're not dealing with someone who was educated in Harvard or Harvard Business School or in Harvard Law School. We're not dealing with someone who went to the elite universities of the land. We're dealing with a man who, when God said, ask me what you want, I'll give it to you. Did not ask for riches, he asked for wisdom. And God gave him wisdom and he became renowned throughout the world for it. Now, by the time he writes what I'm going to read to you here, he was an old man who not only had wisdom given to him as a gift by God, so he really understood what was happening, but he also had experience behind it. Now listen to what he says about government. I, the preacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. This sore travail has God given the Son. Now, you know, I almost began to look at some of the lunches we've been having over the last few weeks. Mr. Gross will know what I'm talking about. That sore travail. Let me ask you this. If you have a problem you're trying to solve, a task you're trying to get done, And you go to work and you plan and you lay stuff out on the desk and you draw lines on paper and you plan how you're going to do it. You go buy the materials to get it done. And you come back and you go to work on the problem and you get it solved and get it done and you come back off and look at it, it's finished and it works. Is this something you would describe as a sore travail? Not really. No, when you can do something about something, and when you can achieve results, when you can set a goal and go out and accomplish your goal, and you step back and see what you have done and it works, this isn't bad. This is good. This is the kind of thing people do and really thoroughly enjoy. Why then did he say it was a sore travail that he was given the sons of men to be exercised with? He goes on to say, I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, everything is futile and a frustration of spirit. You know, that describes most of the political debate in this country. It's vanity and frustration of spirit, isn't it? Watch Larry King Live, you know, when you get a chance to watch it through the week. You know, watch Rush Limbaugh. Listen to his radio program. Listen to the call-ins. Read Time Magazine. Read Newsweek. The whole thing is nothing but vanity and a frustration of the spirit because nobody seems to be going anywhere with any of this stuff. Then he makes a profound statement. That which is crooked cannot be made straight. That which is wanting cannot be numbered. You're just not going to solve the problems the way you're going about it. A man without God, a man who sets out with a sword to solve human problems, is going to be one of the most frustrated people that ever lived. I come in with my own heart saying, Lo, I am come to great estate. I have gotten more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. In fact, my heart has great knowledge of wisdom and knowledge. I mean, what are we going to look for more experience and knowledge? I gave my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly, and I perceive that the whole thing is a frustration of the spirit. Yeah, it really is. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increases knowledge increases sorrow. Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. And you know, in all the political confusion, and the confusion surrounding the debates, and the people, when you listen to them speaking, you wonder, well, is he telling you the truth or is he lying to you? And is he going to carry out this promise, or is it just something to get elected and he's going to break the promise the first chance he gets? And we go through all this stuff. You know, it's really easy for you and I to forget that Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. I forget every once in a while. I've started a couple of editorials. I got a couple of really good ideas that they implement and find out of it. Washing. But it's all vanity and a frustration of spirit. Because my kingdom, Jesus said, is not of this world. And we are not going to solve these things while we have forgotten God. And you see, there's a funny thing that's happened to us in this country. We have a civil religion. In its origins, it was based and it was founded on God. And so consequently, it did not find itself in conflict with God. There was no fundamental conflict with children coming into the school prayer room and the teacher at the beginning of our children, let's all pray before they begin studying. Our God and Father say no problem with that. Why do we have a problem with it now? The answer is simple, folks. Our civil religion has lost its God. And when it began to forget God, upon whom it all was originally based, all it had left was itself. And so that since it no longer is based on God, it becomes God. And our civil God, our civil religion, sees God as the competition, and now has come to the place to where it fights against God. Because we have a religion that has forgot itself. You know, I have a friend who knows President Clinton, who spent time with him, and genuinely likes him. He said to me not long ago, he said, you know, Ron, I feel sorry for him. So do I. I feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for the children of Somalia. I feel sorry for the women of Bosnia. I will have my dying day and injure this poor woman. Just like any of you gals here, who was on her way home, having gone to try to get something to eat and got shot, and she was lying on the ground crying this pitiful, pitiful cry. You know, it wasn't just fear, it wasn't just pain. It was a terrible, terrible cry of hopelessness that this woman had in her world, that her world basically had come to an end. I feel sorry for these people. And I pray, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.